In today's video, we're going over to Justin from Reef Nation. I've been doing videos with him. This is, I think, third year right now. So if you haven't checked out past 2 or 3 videos that I've done with Justin, I'm going to have those in the description down below. So feel free to check them out, since in those videos, he's kind of going over more in details how his system is working and how he's keeping his Acroporas happy. But otherwise, in today's video, he'll be going over what he has been up to lately. Hey, what's up? If this is your first time here, my name is Goran and you're watching Reef on the Roof YouTube channel. In this channel, well, at least last couple of videos, I've been doing reef tank tours. If that's something you enjoy, feel free to like the video, subscribe. So yeah, buckle up and let's go check out Justin's corals.
Well, thanks for coming to take a look at the tank again. And thank everybody for having interest in what we're doing over here. Justin with Reef Nation. This is our main grow out. I'm trying to organize things too. I think since last year, I've tried to get, some of the ones that look like the rainbow loom, goji berry, the paletta pink tip, and a few others that we've got in the same area. It helps for me to, see how they're different. And then when I take pictures of them too, I can see the others in the background, and it's good for customers to be able to see like, oh, I've got that other one. It looks like this, and compare and contrast a little. And of course, when we're all here looking at them, it's nice to see them right next to each other. I'm creating kind of a millie section here, some of which you can see in the front, and then it kind of goes around. Well, a little bit of housekeeping and organizing and, switching out. I'm trying to get all the egg crates to be 4 or 5 inches up too. So I have 2 or 3 more I got to kind of swap out. So that's been a work in progress. I'll do one every couple weeks. There's so much life on the underside of those. Sponges and amphipods and obviously just the surface area of that being full of bacteria that I want to be, gentle in changing those out, because it's definitely a little bit of open heart surgery when you're changing all that stuff up. So slow is always better, as we know in this hobby.
Oh, 100%.
The last time you were here, we were doing 3-part sodium hydroxide. We were running calcium reactor, which would turn on as the pH hits 8.15. And then we had kalkwasser pretty much going 10 mils a minute. We've changed things a little bit. Still running a 3-part. The calcium is just calcium chloride. We're not running sodium hydroxide anymore. We're running the alkalinity part from Fauna, the balling light alkalinity. Magnesium seems to stay fine with the calcium reactor. I have some of those little dolomite stones in there. For magnesium.
Which media are you using for your calcium reactor?
Homegrown. So I don't know, people might cringe at this, but if you've grown corals for a while, eventually some of them, as you can see, there's still some big ones here. Like sometimes they just get too big, right? And obviously when corals get big and they're in captivity, you have to hit them with so much flow to keep the detritus and keep dead spots from happening. In the wild, obviously that's not a problem, right? You got waves, you got storms, you got tides, you got all those things to move tons and tons of water. So with us not having that here, and I just did this last week, we obviously sell them. If people want colonies, hit me up. We definitely, try to sell them first. I throw them in a bucket, bleach, kind of hammer them, break them apart, and that's the media that we use. I have a few years worth of media from a long, long time ago, and more recently too, as I just did a cooler champagne that was probably like bigger than a soccer ball last week. And recycling, that's the way I think of it, right? That helps me from cringing when I think about it. So currently what we're dosing is that calcium, the alkalinity from Fauna, the balling light. The third thing we're dosing is the Tropic Marin Part C. This one, in case anybody asks. That just keeps everything, a little more in ionic balance. We're still not doing tons of water changes. Obviously, we're shipping 3-4 days a week, so there's a fair amount of water I got to put back when we're shipping. So it gets a little water change there, and then I'll probably do 10% once a month. We just got an ICP back from Fauna earlier this week, and it was probably one of the best ones we've ever seen. I don't think there was anything out of whack, which was kind of, nice to see.
Exactly.
But also, I was kind of like laughing to myself because, again, we're doing 3-part, we have calcium reactor, and we have still a little bit of calc. We're doing like 3 mils a minute of calc now. So I'm like, well, all that wackiness, a water change here and there, and it's still staying pretty good. So I was pretty happy with that. So right now, from an element perspective, calcium chloride has the Fauna trace 1 and 2 in it. And then that Fauna alkalinity has the trace 3 in it, which has all the halogens and a lot of that stuff. And there's still some things that I do, like a little bit of my homegrown, kind of like a moonshiners, where I'll add a little bit of this and that, just because I know what's getting used above and beyond. So like strontium, I need another 90 mils over a month. So I just have that dose daily, hourly, and then a couple other things, some chromium, some iron, and vanadium. Those have been a little bit low, so I just throw a 0.5 ml a day in. Again, I just got that test back, so I'm like, okay, validation, it worked and kept it about where it needed to be. The only other input I think that would be fun to talk about a little bit too is food, which has kind of been the topic of 2024, I think, in the reef hobby. As we've explored, dosing bacteria and just food in general, we've obviously been playing around with all of that stuff, try and stay, in lockstep. Alan's up to over there, and here's my thought process for our tanks. I've never had amazing polyp extension. My partner, Brian, I always get jealous when I go over. It's literally the same corals. We're pretty much doing the same thing. And his polyps will be out there flapping in the breeze, right? Same coral over here for whatever reason. At night, there's polyp extension,
They're probably just open when you're there,
Exactly. He's dripping a few things in there to give me a hard time. Makes sense, right? Feed your corals, that's how they eat. So if you train them to eat more like they do in the wild, then you'll probably see better polyp extension, and that's absolutely been the case, right? Even for a guy who never had great polyp extension. Now, even my smoothies at night, it's cool to see their primary polyps out, they're feeding, they're actively trying to catch food. So that's super exciting for me. Even the little red Ferrari, it's got these little tiny polyps, but they come out, right? It's fun to see. So as far as what we're feeding, again, I kind of looked at it and said, well, I don't have squat for daytime polyp extension. So everybody who's like, oh, you can train them to feed in the day, I appreciate that. I trust that it works. It's just, I was like, you know what, for me, that's going to take way longer because they don't try to eat during the day now. So I know they try to eat at night, so let me feed at night. So what I did was took one of the heads on our GHL doser, and I used the GHL. I'm sure other ones have this, but of the ones that I own already, the GHL allows you to go both forwards and reverse, right? So thought process there is whatever food I'm going to feed, it's got to run 20 feet because I want to dose it not by my overflow. I want to dose it as far away from the overflow as possible. So it's got to run 20 feet, and I didn't want whatever food I was feeding to sit in that tube even for hours without oxygen. I'm like, that's just going to be, nastiness that by the time it gets in the tank. Long story short, what I'm doing now is it feeds at night. It's a 2,000 milliliter or 3,000 milliliter beaker that sits on a stir plate. It also has heat. I tried to get it around 90 degrees for some of the bacterial feeds. I'll let that go for 8 hours before 10 p.m. feeding that happens. Our lights go out at 7, so it's a little bit after dark. First 200 mils goes in at 10 o'clock, and then every 2 hours there's another 200 mils that goes in, and then it pulls it back 100 mils to empty the tube. Our feeding happens at night, and what that's done is made things obviously happy, but in the morning when the lights first come on, and even for the first couple hours, and just really in general, I've now seen better polyp extension, right? So even in the daytime now, it's affected it in a good way. And I mentioned the bacterial feeding. We're doing, the concoction of bacteria, a carbon source, food, a little bit of amino, a little bit of enzyme. So think like your Zeozyme, or there's some other products that are similar to that. And here for the video, there's a lot of things in there, right? But again, they all fall into those categories. And the reason I have so many is just because I had them. So just like when Alan first started doing his, I'm just using them up, right? Once I'm done with all the extras that I've got, like I said, it's going to be one thing from each of those groups. I think that's plenty. Again, that's only once or twice a week that I'm doing that whole kind of, Alan version 2 concoction, letting that sit in the beaker for 8 hours, and then at 9 p.m. it starts dosing it automatically. The other nights, I've got a mixture that I use of dried phyto and some baker's yeast. I don't know if that's good, if it's not, but every night after I do that, I'm looking in the morning and seeing what it looks like when I grab my first cup of coffee here at 6:30 in the morning, and lights are coming on. Right as those lights hit, everything's still out, so I can kind of see, are there any new growth, little sprouts. That's kind of in the feeding side of things, what we're doing. And again, for me, I'm going to keep doing it at night just because I know the feeding polyps are out, rather than just making a bunch of detritus, which is probably what would happen if I did it during the day, or maybe the fish would eat it, right? At night, I know the corals are going to eat it, so I'm going to stick with that for now. And if suddenly I have crazy flowing polyps, then, maybe I'll adjust it during the day sometime. Lighting, I don't think has changed much since last year. Still radions. I run that halide for 8 hours a day between 4 radions. 2 of these radions are the Pro with the white, and all the rest on this tank are blues. 4 OR bars. I will say the par over there is ridiculous. Everything you see there in the foreground is probably around 400, and then over where those yellow tangs are at, on the middle of the corals, is pushing 800-900, maybe even 1,000 for 8 hours a day. So you don't want to put every coral in that environment, but again, I've messed around and played with the ones. The millies are generally fine with that much par. And you'll get some interesting colors coming out of some of them, and the growth tips have been just insane, right, coming out of there. You can see a lot of those millies kind of towards the center there, just like sending up a bunch of stuff. So even the smooth skin, right? Smooth skins, you know, sometimes we call them deep waters, but a lot of those can take a lot of par. I'm sure they're not all from the same location either, you know. Our experience with sodium hydroxide was, you know, other than you have to be careful with it, right, was really only positive. We didn't have, you know, any issues with it. pH was great. What's been funny is when I switched to this, and I don't want to start the whole debate about the bolus stuff and what's in their alkalinity part, it's a mix, right? It's both carbonate and bicarbonate in some ratio. It works well, and it keeps, I mean, our pH, what are we at now? Lights have been on for a little while, so we're at 8.42 in this tank right now. I think it peaks around 8.48 and goes down to around 8.1 at night, probably by midnight. I'm happy with that anyway, right? Sodium hydroxide, you know, kind of got you to the same place, but again, I had to be a lot more careful, like handling it and all that stuff. Until a month ago, the quarantine tank was running still the 3-part with sodium hydroxide, and then I just switched it over because I finally went through I try to use everything up before I switch, so I don't have 9 million containers of extra things hanging around, but that's now running the fauna marin balling light part 2 as well, or I guess they call it part 3, but I've always called the alkalinity part 2. I've just been used to that, but it's their alkalinity. I feel like we open these doors enough throughout the day when the kids are driving to high school or my wife or I are leaving that I think it gets enough air exchange in here. But I would, in the summer, I really wish I had an air conditioning, you know, unit in here sometimes too. It takes the edge off. So the skimmer, I tie into outside air. At least we get a little bit of air exchange there. So for water quality, we do, just because I have literally a full bucket of it. Currently, we're still running that RO X carbon from a long time ago. I'll probably go to more of the lignite or the coconut-based little pellets once that's empty. Once a week, I'll do about a cup and a half. It's running probably a liter every 10 minutes, maybe 6 liters an hour, you know, is flowing through it. So it's a little more gentle. I can tell too, just looking, like, especially when the halide's on, you can probably see it in the video. You can see where the water's clear or if it's starting to get a little bit where it needs a little more carbon. I saw that my ICP test that we just got back this week had now a new thing for the NCP 560, whatever the new test they're doing for the DOC. So just like Triton have sent NDOCs in maybe once a quarter, but now on my fauna total, there's a line that's, I don't know if you pay extra, I haven't looked into it yet. I've heard it's a decent, you know, reading of TOC.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little different from the NDOC, but it's something. It's a data point, right? Like, I figure for a couple months I can at least just look at it and be like, okay, did it go up? Did it go down? Right? And how do things look? You know, really that's the gauge of it at the end of the day. Is the polyp extension better? Are things growing faster? So that's an interesting data point to keep an eye on, and I'm glad we're expanding what we know and what we think we know in this hobby all the time. It's kind of the equivalent of when you talk about GFO for phosphate, right? It's
exactly.
You're bringing a large gun to a knife fight.
And we were talking about Acroporas here. You know, any other coral,
super sensitive.
It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yep.
But we were talking about microelements and carbon and be careful about stability and everything else.
You definitely want to be careful with them. So don't go loading up your canisters, especially with the ROX. I got about a half a bucket left, so I just got to be gentle till probably April. We've done ozone for a long time. Again, it's in the garage, so I don't really...
You don't run that anymore?
It runs 7 minutes every hour.
Right.
Just a little bit. Honestly, I mean, I know it's working because you can smell it here and there. I have it go through the skimmer, so it's kind of like keeping it in the skimmer lid, at least. You want to be careful with it, too. It's obviously a huge oxidizer, so you got to be careful.
Have you changed anything else as far as filtration? You're still running just your big skimmer, and that's it, right? The live rock?
Skimmer, live rock. I mean, we've been doing this a long time, right? Back in the early 2000s, not to sound like a dinosaur, right? And even in the late 90s when I first started doing this, the thing that if you looked on any of we were reading books at that point because they weren't forums, right? That all the Germans replacing a little bit of live rock every couple of months, like 10 pounds, 5 pounds. With all the bacteria talk of the last year, I was like, I remember that. I was looking through my, Julian Sprung it was literally like if you took a forum and put it in a book, he used to have these reef notes where people ask questions. I was rereading one of them, and I think it was volume 2 or 3, and it was, somebody had mentioned that in there, and it just stuck in my head. We obviously have a limited sources of live rock nowadays.
It's very expensive.
Right, and it's expensive because you got to ship it. Marco Rock is now taking dry rock, putting it out in the ocean, much like Tampa Bay saltwater does, which is where I got all my live rock back in '98 when I first started doing this. Had to drive down to Midway and do the whole Southwest Airlines cargo thing and all that. And we got 300 pounds of live rock, my buddy and I. Had all sorts of good things and all sorts of bad things on it. But we'll try and get a shot of this too. A lot of that live rock is still in my sump. And I definitely want to mention, you know, the things that Steve Tyree used to talk about, gosh, back in 03, 04. I think he put a couple CDs out that went through all this stuff at one of his talks in SoCal, is the cryptic sump process of like getting your live rock in the dark to have sponges and all the little things that happen. You know, if you've ever been snorkeling on a reef and you see those big reef boulders that are out there, yes, there's corals on top. But if you swim down and look underneath, besides the lobster, right, there's all these cool filter feeders and things that are part of the equation that we need to take count of, right? And we need to pay attention to those in the hobby. And you can probably see a lot of the sponges and stuff here. I've still got purple and yellow and white and black and beige and every color of the rainbow, right? All these different sponges. And when I got that live rock in, I just kind of like stuck it into that, you know, pile that we've got in there. I've got it elevated off the bottom so I can also vacuum underneath and get the detritus out. But all day long, water's flowing from this side over to the other side. The sponges are growing. They're taking silicates and other things out of the water column, things that we generally want to remove. They're probably removing and filtering the water in addition to that, right, from other things. There's a reason that in the wild it's part of the equation, right? So why wouldn't we have it as part of the equation? So just try to replicate that and I guess take care of that a little bit better than maybe in past years by adding some seed rock to it that came right from the ocean. So there's hopefully some new bacteria in there, maybe a little bit of a reset. And then just vacuuming the detritus a little bit more regularly as we do that monthly water change. That's where I take it from, right? I get in there and I have a 100-foot hose that I bring down my hill so I have some good suction in here and clean it out. You know, and that in addition to the sponges that are growing on the underside of the egg crate have been a really good filtration source over the years. And, you know, I want to take care of those and treat them better and maybe even enhance them a little bit if I can, right?
Hey, if you made it so far, feel free to like the video, subscribe, of course, that'll mean a lot. All these quotes that you guys seen in today's video, feel free to check them out on Justin's website. And of course, if you have any question for Justin, I'm gonna have links down below for his Facebook and Instagram. Otherwise, if you feel like watching more reefing tours, check out this video that I've done with Anand. He has a large high-end Acropora collection, or if you prefer more LPS corals, check out this video that I've done with David. With all that out of the way, I'll see you guys over there.